Welcome to Pirate Politics, where we prepare you for your next political conversation. I'm Jeronimo Cortina, a political science professor at the University of Houston.
And I'm Brandon Rottinghaus, also a political science professor here at the University of Houston. Thanks for hanging out with us and talking politics. Lots going on. This reminds me of like the Trump days. Remember what it was like when everything was happening kind of all at once, and there's so much you have to kind of like consolidate. Right. That's what we're going to try to do this week because we got to prep people for their weekend conversations because you know it's going to come up.
It's going to come up.
One thing that definitely is going to come up is Elon Musk, obviously, is the head of SpaceX, and he was in Texas this week for a launch, and he was joined by his best bro friend, none other than President-elect Donald Trump. But it occurred to me, in addition to it being an interesting kind of bromance, that this is a sort of story about how Texas plays into the kind of political world of Donald Trump. There's always been a strong connection there. We've talked about this over the course of the last year, but it doesn't seem actually like there's a lot of Texans who are being tapped to the cabinet. John Radcliffe, former, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, former member of Congress from Texas, but that's kind of it. So what do you make of kind of Texas's role in this besides Musk?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, we also have heard, Don Buckingham offering land for mass deportation facilities.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. Like 1,400 acres, which is
That's
a big
lot.
print. Yeah.
Yeah. Down there in Starr County. So it's trying to insert themselves. I think Texas will benefit one way or the other. Obviously, Elon Musk has spurred the growth down RGB, making prices of land completely unaffordable.
Some of it's free, though, apparently. They're giving out land.
But obviously, creating, economic growth there, job opportunities. So we'll see.
In Austin, too, right? Yeah.
In Austin, too, as well. Tesla's here. X is here also as well. And we'll see what else he's going to bring or buy now that his investment is going to go, I guess, some return.
Going to have a good return. I'm thinking about the politics of this, where we had expected to see a lot of exodus from Texas politicians to the Trump administration. Possibly Sid Miller, so far, no. Possibly Ken Paxton, that's a no because Matt Gaetz got the nod temporarily. We'll talk about that in a second, too. But people like Wesley Hunt, the member of Congress here from Houston, was a huge Trump supporter.
Up and down.
Yeah, he didn't get a nod yet. Beth Van Dyne also didn't get a nod. She was also a staunch Trump supporter. We may see some judges down the road, right? There are some jurists who are conservative and probably in that Trump orbit.
Yes, but in the Fifth Circuit, if someone retires from the Supreme Court.
There you go.
Yeah.
Like a James Ho.
Right.
And also, too, like, maybe more important than kind of the head of the serpent is like the body of the serpent. And that's that you've got a lot of staff members, people who are like think tank, members, people who are kind of really generating the intellectual side of how to develop policy, like the Texas Public Policy Foundation, the conservative think tank, or the America First Foundation, right? This is where Brooke Rollins is the head. This was sort of done after Trump left office. So there are still kind of policy connections and personnel connections, just surprisingly not at the top of the ticket.
But let me ask you, if they haven't gone in, for example, A.G. Paxton, that primarily, well, not primarily, but part of his job was to sue the Biden administration every other week.
Yeah.
What is he going to do? I mean, and I'm asking seriously, right?
What do you say you do here, right?
Yeah, because right now, and I've been thinking a lot about this, especially Texas Republicans have been having these for the past 4 years, these aggressive stance against the Biden administration, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Now they have the whole train, the whole enchilada is theirs.
Right.
They control Texas government up and down. They made, pretty good gains in this election. The Senate is controlled by Republicans. The White House, the House,
they've got the combo platter, right? You got the crunchy taco,
right.
you got the tamale.
Exactly. But now what? I mean,
it's a great question. Just this week, right, there was the 100th case that the Paxton brought against the Biden administration. The numbers will decline, but I think you'll still see a lot of pressure from Texas and other states to try to change the federal government's policies. Because even though Trump comes in as a kind of as a Republican president, they'll change agency heads and they'll develop some new policies. Things don't change immediately. There's still a lot of policies in place that that the Paxton camp would like to see change and Texas would like to amend. So they'll still sue them over various things, but you won't see the kind of same resistance. Okay. So things will probably go.
And we have Musk and Ramaswamy, just streamline
like
things.
Batman and Robin, just like checking for waste,
Boom.
right?
There you go.
It could work, and they're going to have their work cut out for them, especially on this next issue, which is about mass deportations. The President-elect Trump this week more or less said that this was on the agenda for the first week of the his administration. He plans to declare a national emergency. This is something presidents can do. They're allowed to basically trigger an emergency through statute, and then that gives them expanded powers that Congress has allowed them to have. The big picture here is that we've got basically about 11 million undocumented people in this country. If those people are eventually sent out of the country, it could affect up to 20 million people in this nation. But wait, there's more. The economic impact could be serious, right? There are people who have said that this could basically cost between $150 billion and $300 billion to carry out, as well as just the impact on like certain services, right? Certain sectors of the economy. So there's a chance that you could see the GDP dip because you're getting rid of a lot of workers.
Absolutely.
So it's a trade-off for President Trump, right, in terms of kind of facilitating his campaign promise, but also making sure the economy stays pretty stable. So what do you think about the kind of expectations that are going to happen the first few weeks of this?
Well, certainly he's going to declare a national emergency. Probably he's going to use, or he has said that he's going to use the military to carry out one way or the other. It is 1,000% unclear how.
Right.
You have the Policy Commitment Act that prohibits the involvement of the U.S. military in civilian public safety situations. You would have to deputize them as ICE agents. Or Border Patrol agents, to exercise immigration law. So it's very complicated.
Pulling them off of other stuff like FBI, local law enforcement.
Absolutely.
Like, that just, there's stuff they're doing that now they're not going to do.
But that's another implication, whether it's going to be in the interior of the country, the border of the country, whatnot. But what I think is, especially in the last 2 weeks of the campaign trail, Trump started to finesse the argument.
We call that the art of backtracking.
Exactly. Well, I mean, just finessing the argument.
Sure.
I'm from mass deportation, from 11 million, so on and so forth. Now we're going to deport criminals.
Yeah.
So
you saw that trend change, and people like Ted Cruz were saying, okay, well, it's not going to be everybody. It's going to be just these people. Okay.
Because then you generate these, especially when you're thinking about the agricultural sector, the agricultural industry, farmers that are heavily reliant on migrant labor, whether it's through special visas or, undocumented migrants. And that's going to have a hit, and that hit can hit directly into our pocketbooks, right? Because, prices of, agricultural produce, so on and so can go up immensely. So that's an issue.
And they're already high. That was part of the reason that he won. So,
and we have seen it. We saw it back in 2006 and before that, when states like, for example, Alabama, Georgia started to have these anti-immigrant legislation, migrants left and left a lot of crop on the ground, and they had a huge hit. So we're going to see how that plays out. But I think it could easily come up with the campaign promise. You have a lot of people that are right now in jails. You can just deport them without waiting until they have their sentence, and off you go.
Yeah, that's good. And some of the kind of things they can undo from what the Biden administration has done are also easy fixes, right? So there's a special visa-free humanitarian parole process for people from Cuba and Haiti and Nicaragua. That's something they can undo kind of immediately. I feel like they could sort of fairly quickly accomplish at least the goal of having a prima facie case that we've done what we said we were going to do, which was to deport people who are a danger to the citizens here.
Correct.
But the farther they go, the harder it's going to be on the economy. So that's the question: is like, when do you stop? Right? When do you sort of make the case that you've done what you said you were going to do, and then hopeful of the economy basically kind of rights itself, or is there an endless appetite for this? Which it seems to me there is. Right? Republicans are always looking for a way to say, like, we have to fix this problem. And just if you deport, let's say, how many people is that? Like less than 1 million people, 500,000 people at best. That doesn't sort of strike me as a fulfilling of a promise.
Oh, absolutely not. But it's very complicated to do otherwise. And if you stop TPS, that is the temporary protective status, for example, for countries that are eventually coming at higher rates, like Venezuela. Then you give the illusion people are going to be less likely to get, cross the border without that potential benefit of having a TPS protective status. And then you have the role that Mexico is going to play. And the role that Canada is going to play. If you start mass deportations, you're going to see people trying to get into Canada. And Canada, the border over there is porous, like you have no idea.
There's just like elk and trees.
And that's it. And maple syrup. But that it.
The best,
it.
I'm thinking of going actually now. You make it sound
so
enticing.
That will create a problem for Canada, and Canada is going to say, we can't, because they're dealing with their own problems, especially with asylum seekers.
Interesting.
And Mexico has said, like, you can deport whoever you want. We're not going to take no Mexicans.
It's not our,
so how are you going to deport them? Coordinating flights from here to, I don't know, let's say Venezuela.
Right.
All those things are a logistical nightmare
and
that is going to be
expensive.
very complicated and super expensive.
Let me ask you one more question on this. You did a paper years ago about remittances. That's the money that people in the U.S. send back to other countries that they're from. What effect does the mass deportation have on that and the economies of those countries?
Correct. I mean, it depends. And depends in the sense of, for example, for Mexico, remittances are the crown jewel to stabilize the Mexican peso.
Interesting.
And without them, it's going to be very hard. It's free money, and remittances, not only in terms of the ones that migrants send every single month or whatnot, could have a very important implication in Mexico, creating perhaps more undocumented migration from Mexico.
More incentives to come in.
And right now, Mexico is transitioning from a country that sends migrant into a destination country. And now you have more people staying in Mexico, more people that travel from Central America, from Venezuela, just staying in Mexico. So that's an additional problem. So we're going to see how this thing plays out.
Nothing short of world chaos, right? Okay. Well, let's go from chaos internationally to chaos in Washington, D.C. So obviously the president-elect has picked a bunch of different people to be in various cabinet roles. We'll highlight a few here as we go. Some of these picks are pretty solid picks. I mean, Linda McMahon has an interesting pick, right? As who's going to be the head of the Department of Education.
Right.
People say she's never been in the classroom, but she knows how to manage agencies. She was head of the Small Business Administration. She's also a character in the Nintendo 64 game on the WWE. So interesting. A little tidbit.
Absolutely.
No other cabinet member has that.
Right.
So, but that's a kind of solid pick, it seems to me. Somebody who likes Trump and is loyal to Trump and can manage an agency. Others are going to be more controversial. So we talked obviously about this last week. Matt Gaetz is a great example of that. You may have heard a little something about this. He's been under investigation, federal investigation, for some sexual abuse crimes. It turns out they didn't ever issue charges. But the House is investigating some of his other behaviors that may be more problematic. This is definitely going to come out, at least in some of the hearings. Pete Hegseth, who is going to be the nominee for a cabinet position, is also accused of sexual assault and issued a settlement or agreed to a settlement with the accuser. This was also known to the Trump administration. I'm asking this question because I'm wondering kind of what the the president-elect's end game is here. Some of this is definitely like a finger in the eye of the Washington establishment, but some of this obviously is about trying to get people who are loyal in these positions.
Oh, absolutely.
But like we said last week, there's a real trade-off between competence and loyalty. And the way that the agencies are scored and the way that the performance of these agencies is scored definitely takes a hit when you have people who are political appointees. One thing we saw, actually, here's an interesting note, that when President Obama was in power, what he did is he put his political appointees into positions that he didn't have as much use for. They weren't central to his agenda. Now, I guess the question is if President-elect Trump is doing the same kind of thing, where you're getting people who are like Matt Gaetz, people who are loyal and maybe problematic, but who are otherwise going to be like out of the way, right? Like not essential. That is, as of our recording, Treasury has not been set, and Treasury is critical, right?
Yes.
And so that's an important role, whereas maybe Trump thinks that some of these other roles are not that critical. What do you think?
Well, I mean, but you're talking about two of the biggest agencies with a huge impact on the economy, national security, so on and so. You're talking about
not as big on Trump's agenda is, I think, the way that this is the way the scholars say, right? They say basically like presidents try to get their appointees out of the way. Like, we're going to put you as a friend in this other position, but we're not going to have you in a really pivotal role for the things I care about.
Right, but what I'm trying to say here is that the DOJ, whether it's in the president's agenda or not,
still important.
It's extremely important. Whether the Department of Defense with nominee access is huge. It has the biggest budget of all agencies, has a huge impact on national security, foreign relations, you name it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's something that I can see. I see the argument and see what the literature says, but I'm like, maybe Department of Interior, it's fine.
Right.
Or
picking Doug Burgum, right, as Interior is actually a good play because he's from a state that has a lot of land and definitely is publicly managed.
Sure,
so.
but what I'm trying to say is like, I don't know.
What you're trying to say is like, it's unclear. And I think that's exactly right. I mean, obviously we have sort of trends that we think about that are kind of practical and how political science studies this. But then there's the pick of like Mehmet Oz to be the head of Medicare and Medicaid services, or the pick of Sean Duffy, who I remember from The Real World. I used to love that show. His wife too is in The Real World cast. So there are obviously the kind of reality show elements to his his cabinet, but it's I think the deeper connection is that these are people that Trump thinks he can control and thinks that are loyal to him, and they probably largely are. The real question is like, are they going to get confirmed? That's the real substantial question.
If they don't go through Reese's appointment, it's going to be some of them complicated. If the Senate says, wait, we're not willing to give you the prerogatives of advice and consent of the Senate, if that happens, then we'll see that there's going to be some problems. And again, this issue, let's suppose that President Trump can have all his nominees go forward. Even Matt Gaetz.
Oh, the Senate takes a recess. They all go to Tahiti.
Exactly. Let's go
on the beach,
on vacation.
Just like, earbuds in, don't listen, recess. And everyone, they come back and like, all the agencies are staffed.
Okay, let's suppose that. So in terms of balancing campaign promises, how? How, people that do not have administrative experience, and you're not talking about 15 people. You're talking about massive departments like RFK in Health and Human Services. That's an insane size of the bureaucracy. It's very complex, so on and so. How are you going to deliver it if you don't even know?
Well, that's a great point. And one of the things that the scholarship says on this is that that people who are political appointees have less productive times in office. So basically their scores on the metrics that the Bush administration put into place to measure agency performance are lower. So there's a trade-off, right? Like I said, I mean, you can put people who are loyal to you in these positions who are politically faithful, but it might not mean that you're going to get the kind of performance of that agency you need. And they've got to perform, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Remember Trump's whole campaign promise was was, I can fix it. Well, if it turns out that you can't fix it because of this kind of bureaucratic knot, then it's going to make it even harder for you to claim that you've done it, and easier for Democrats in 2 years, less than 2 years, Jeronimo, I hate to bring it up, but the midterms where they're going to say, look, I mean, you promised it, it didn't deliver, they're going to clean house. So I think that's the real kind of problem that he faces, in addition to just getting some of these folks put on the roll. So we'll see. But let's talk about other transitions. There are a lot of kind of soul searching going on right now for Democrats. We have seen a transition in the top level of offices at both the national level at the DNC. Jamie Harrison is stepping down, and then also in Texas, the Gilberto Hinojosa, who's been the head of the Democratic Party in Texas for more than a decade, is also stepping down. Let's first start with the DNC nationally. Jamie Harrison obviously decided to step down. The role of the DNC chair isn't really a policy-making role. They don't choose what issues candidates run on. Really what they do is raise money and make sure the infrastructure of the party is set to go. But there's been a lot of generational divide about how to do this. You've got Nancy Pelosi, you've got Steny Hoyer, you've got Joe Biden leaving the stage. The younger generation is coming along saying, we want to have a say in how this goes. So people like Martin O'Malley, who you may remember ran for president very briefly,
yes,
right? He was the governor of Maryland, is interested. Strategist Chuck Rocha, who is one of the keynote strategists for the Latino vote, is also thinking of running. Names like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Tim Kaine have come up. Lots of potential options here for Democrats moving forward. What's the play here? What's the move that's going to get them the votes they need in the midterm and then 4 years from now?
Rahm Emanuel.
I would love to see Rahm in that. He is a bulldog and exciting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, that would be very interesting to watch. I think Democrats need to really put the sign and say close for renovations.
Yeah.
We'll be back in a month or something like that, and really focus on the autopsy of this current election and what has happened before.
Yeah. But when a restaurant closes, like for renovations, it often means that they're closing permanently.
Correct.
You don't think that's what's happening.
Right.
You mean literally, we're going to reboot. We've got the money. We're going to make this better.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think that there's still appetite to counterbalance the new MAGA movement.
Yeah.
The question is that the branding of the Democratic Party is not the right branding.
Yeah.
The branding of talking to the average working family is not the way that working families are expecting to be talked to.
Yeah.
So once they figure out that, and we have talked here in terms of, in our humble, very humble opinion, what happened, indeed, what happened with this current election, it's a way of how they're communicating with the average voter and the needs, wants, and preferences.
Yeah, the top of the ticket, right? Because we know that actually, if you look at the numbers, that the Democrats performed well in states where there were battlegrounds. But of the 5 key battlegrounds, Harris lost, but four of them Democrats won. So there is still a messaging that can work, but it's not coming from the top of the ticket. So the infrastructure needs to be tweaked. The money's got to be there. They have to spend it more wisely. There's stories this week about how Harris in the campaign blew through more than $1 billion. A lot of it was to like Cardi B for like a $500,000 concert or something.
Yeah.
Like there's just a lot of kind of wasteful spending when you've got that much money on the books. But given the short period, they wanted to kind of blow through it and not have anything left saying like, it's all in the field. But obviously there's a lot of things that have to happen. But let's transition from talking about the national party to talking about the state party. Last week, Gilberto Hinojosa ended his 12-year run leading the state. It ended in a kind of ignominious fashion, right? He, in a narrative discussion with a journalist about what happened during the campaign, said that maybe they had gone too far to do things like protecting transgender rights.
Right.
There was some blowback from this. That's not why he was fired or why he stepped down, but it is a symptom of the confusion of the messaging from the Democratic Party. Like, are the Democratic Party members supporting the rights of people who are transgender or not? And it was unclear from his statement and then apology and then eventual firing. things have not gone well for the Texas Democratic Party, right? He came into office in 2012 with the Obama bump, with the hope that Texas would be purple and the Latino vote would bail out the Democrats. That has not happened.
Nope.
The Democrats have gained about 1 million voters over the course of that time period, which is pretty good. But Republicans, wait for it, gained 2 million voters. So they're finding new voters, and Democrats are too, but not as many. I feel like Hinojosa was living on borrowed time. There was just a kind of inevitable conclusion to this, right? So he ran against Carol Robinson, who is the former chair of the Texas Coalition of Black Democrats, and also Kim Olson, who's a former statewide and congressional candidate. They pressed him to do better to enhance the field operation. They hadn't really done it. So to me, I think they failed on money, messaging, mobilization.
Absolutely.
It's just been a bit of a disaster.
And we have seen, and I think that the field operation is critical, and especially if you want to guide woo the Latino voters to your side. If you don't have field presence, nothing is going to happen.
And a consistent one too, right? That's been the story.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they cannot go, and we have said it 11,000 times, to the well every 2 years. If you are not there every single day, nothing is going to happen.
Totally. It's easy to dunk on him by saying, like, he didn't do a good job because you're a Democrat in Texas, but that, frankly, is the case. And they've got to build an infrastructure that's going to work for them for the future. So, obviously, since about 18, it's been kind of downhill. And all they've done is make excuses. Like in 2020, they came out with a report that tried to sort of justify what happened, and it was a lot of finger pointing and not a lot of solutions. So, definitely, they're going to have to reboot and, re-examine things. But the last thing I want to talk about this week is Greg Abbott. The governor has issued an executive order that's going after Chinese espionage. So Greg Abbott, in addition to being a border hawk and being a tax cutter, can add spy hunter to his list of accomplishments. Basically, the executive order is set to target and arrest people who have been trying to influence people who are of Chinese descent in this nation from the Chinese government. This has become a kind of flashpoint. Do you think this will have any kind of political effect? Jean Wu, who is born in China, now a member of the legislature here in Houston, has said, this is something that we can work together on. So bipartisan support on this issue?
Absolutely. I think so. And it's allegedly in this operation or fox hunt, it's targeting naturalized citizens or permanent residencies. So, good for the governor. And we'll see if these pans out. And
spy hunter,
hunter.
Get him like a tuxedo and a martini.
Why not? And I think it's good. And if they can work in a bipartisan way, it's more than welcome.
All the better,
And we'll continue this conversation, this spy hunting next week. I'm Jeronimo Cortina.
And I'm Brandon Rottinghaus. We'll see you next week.